event today, wherever you are joining us from in the world. You are joining us with a wonderful international panel who are all here to discuss if local democracy can be a solution to climate change, what aspects can be leveraged to save the climate, and what the limitations might be to this approach. This event is kindly organised by the Swedish International Centre for Local Democracy in partnership with People Powered, the International Observatory on Participatory Democracy, IOPD, Shipyard Foundation, the Field of Dialogue Foundation, and the Montreal Urban Ecology Centre. The event is actually organised as part of the Local Democracy Talks series by the Swedish International Centre for Local Democracy, and I am delighted to introduce their Secretary General, Johan Lilja, who is going to talk to us about the drive for democracy to get us started. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Kelly, and good afternoon to you all, or if you are elsewhere in the world, it's at least afternoon here in Sweden. As mentioned, my name is Johan Lilja. I'm the Secretary General of Swedish International Centre for Local Democracy. And we at ICLD are engaged in the drive for democracy. Sweden stands up in all contexts for the fundamental principles of democracy. And these include citizen participation, human rights, representative government, separation of power, and a functioning rule of law system, free media, and independent institutions. Democracy around the world is unfortunately in decline. The painful truth is that more people currently lives in countries with authoritarian tendencies than in countries making democratic progress. So democratic processes are being undermined. Democracy cannot be taken for granted. We must protect democracy every day. Sweden has long been at the forefront of promoting, protecting, and safeguarding democracy throughout the world. As part of the drive for democracy, the Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Missions Abroad implement locally arranged democracy talks throughout the year. The purpose of the talk is to highlight the condition of democracy globally and locally, and create engagement in discussions about democracy. This mission has inspired ICLD to make local democracy talks with the same ambition. ICLD believe that the solution to solve complex challenges such as the climate change is by strengthen and improve democratic dialogue. Today, the local democracy talk is an effort to strengthen, reimagine, and bring innovative participatory climate actions by local governments. This negative trend must be reversed if we are able to tackle the many global challenges facing us today. Cooperation and cross-border alliances are the only way. No country, no municipality, no can tackle the world challenges alone. Climate change, poverty, lack of equality, lack of respect for human rights. For this reason, we have invited an extraordinary group of panelists to share cases related to local government's efforts to make climate change. We are convinced that democracy is the best foundation for a sustainable society. A democratic, inclusive, and equal society gives everyone the best of opportunities to achieve their full potential and to contribute to and participate in a developing society. With those words, I would like to thank you in advance that you have decided to be part of the drive for democracy today, but also for the days to come. So once again, welcome to Local Democracy Talks, Participatory Climate Action, Local Government Innovations. Thank you so much. Back to you, Kelly.
Thank you so much for that wonderful and warm introduction on behalf of the Swedish International Centre for Local Democracy. Much appreciated. So I'm just going to introduce one of our wonderful partners in making this event happen, who is Nikhil Kumar from People Powered, who's just going to say a few words before I start introducing the panel. Nikhil.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so thank you so much. My name is Nikhil Kumar. I'm the Research and Policy Associate at People Powered, and we're one of the co-organizers for this event. And I'm just going to briefly talk about People Powered. So our mission is to expand people's power to make government decisions by supporting organizations and governments that are building participatory democracy around the world. So our work is really to support you and your work. And what is participatory democracy? Participatory democracy takes many forms. We focus on 5 in our work: participatory budgeting, participatory policy making, participatory planning, citizens, juries and assemblies, and legislative theater. So what do? We share resources, build power, and change policies. First, we share resources, and we've compiled the most useful videos, guides, and other materials in an online resource center for practitioners, which is sort of a recommended reading list for you. And we have a growing collection of climate-related resources in the resource center. We also build power, and this includes training opportunities and other support for practitioners, including online courses on climate assemblies and participatory budgeting, as well as a free peer mentorship program that you can sign up for to receive guidance from other practitioners who have implemented participatory processes. And finally, we work to change policies by building and strengthening coalitions, campaigns, and communication. And we work with national and international organizations, including ICLD, to advance participatory climate action and participatory democracy more generally. So yeah, that's been a brief introduction to People Powered, and I'm really looking forward to this event. And yeah, so back to you, Kelly.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Nikhil. Much appreciated. Okay, so everyone, I'm going to introduce the panel in a moment, but of course we know that local government on every continent is developing solutions to empower people, residents to address climate change and its impacts. So the panel that we've brought together today brings around a group of actors from all over the world, and they really are from all over the world, to share their experiences of democratic innovations that promote involvement and participation of citizens in response to climate change. So we have 5 brilliant speakers for you today. We have Kasia Pawlowska representing the Shipyard Foundation, who will talk about the Climate Citizens Assembly in Warsaw, Poland. We have Anne Gaultier, who joins us from the Centre d'Écologie Urbaine de Montréal and who will speak about participatory budgeting in Montreal, Canada. We have Mayor Mikael Rubin, who is the Mayor of Trelleborg in Sweden, who's going to talk about some brilliant local initiatives there. And we have Rizka Hidiani, who represents the Kota Kita and will speak about the initiative of the local government of Semarang in Indonesia in promoting local climate actions. And last but never least, we have Katongo Sayuba, who is a research assistant at the Climate Change and Risk Programme at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. And he will share his research and experience on local level climate adaptation in Zambia, including challenges and opportunities from local action. So I hope that gets you really excited for the speakers that we have with us today. And I'm going to take them in order that we presented. So each of our speakers has a few minutes just to share a little bit about their case. And then we're going to get into a Q&A session, a question and answer session. And you as attendees of this event are really welcome to answer questions throughout. Please do just pop them in the chat as usual. Okay, Kasia, you are up first.
Hi, thanks. Hello, I'm really happy to be here with you, and I will be speaking about climate assembly in Warsaw. It all began in 2019, and it began with very vocal citizens' voice. It was a time in Warsaw when many grassroots groups, environmental NGOs, urban movements, and any other stakeholders from Warsaw and outside of the city started advocating for more, if you will, advanced, ambitious climate policy in Warsaw. And they were organizing youth climate strikes, numerous related events. They launched a petition to the mayor, as well as social media campaign. So many things happened at the time, and they met several times with the city mayor and called for a citizens' assembly to address climate emergency in Warsaw. And what is climate assembly? It is a type of deliberative process in which large amount of people, from 50 to 100 on average, randomly selected people, come together to learn about the topic and then discuss it and provide a set of recommendations to the decision makers. So that process was ignited by the people of Warsaw in our case, and the office responded positively to it, and then took it from there. At the very beginning, people's will, the residents' will, was to conduct the assembly on all climate-related issues, as it was done in UK or France at national level. But City Hall decided that the scope of the assembly should be a bit narrower, and it finally focused on two main areas: energy efficiency and renewable energy use in the city. So it was the first assembly in Warsaw, I think the 5th in Poland, so it was still perceived as a social experiment, I would say. So it seemed safer to test this tool on a smaller scale. And after, I think, 2 waves of COVID, we stepped in, our organization, Shikra Foundation, and 2 others from Warsaw, and we organized the whole assembly. And due to the pandemic, we were forced to conduct it fully online. All meetings with residents were on Zoom, so we had to learn and then teach people how to use this tool in ahead of the process. And during the meetings, we tried to provide them, if they needed it, any personal assistance with technical stuff at their places and online as well. And we met with them. It was 90 randomly selected people from Warsaw. We met several times, mainly on weekends, and the first half of the process was aimed to provide them with the knowledge base. We invited experts, stakeholders, as well as city officials to give their knowledge, their opinions, and recommendation on what should be done to address the assembly goal. And people who were attending the assembly would also talk and ask questions, talk with the experts, and then discuss and digest all the absorbed information in smaller groups and during the half of the process. And the second half was planned for more deliberation, for searching for the best idea, best solutions for the city to address problems with energy efficiency and renewable energy usage in town, and then formulating own ideas, prioritizing them, and finally, at the very end of the process, voting. And as a result, assembly members chose 49 out of many, many more recommendations, which were submitted by experts, other stakeholders, assembly members themselves, and residents of Warsaw. And the chosen recommendations become obligatory to the City Hall. And for now, they are in the implementation phase. So it would be in a nutshell about our process in Warsaw.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kasia. It's brilliant to hear about that Climate Citizens Assembly process in Warsaw, and I'm sure we'll touch on it more in the questions. Anne, can I please welcome you to talk a bit more about participatory budgeting in Montreal?
Yes, of course. So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. So participatory budgeting is a democratic process that allows the population to decide how to spend a portion of a public budget. I will often say PB for participatory budget to go faster. So the city puts aside a part of its budget, and it's the people who decide how to spend it. It has three main stages: a collection of ideas, the development of those ideas in projects, and the vote by the people. The projects that are voted are realized by the city. So it's a decisional vote. Sorry, I have difficulty to say that word. So PB is done throughout the world and is a rising trend in Quebec since the last 15 years. Last year only at Montreal Ecology Urban Center, we helped 7 cities and boroughs to put in place their PB. So I will talk about Montreal PB. We supported the city in the design and the implementation of its first PB. 10 million were put aside to carry out social and environmental projects proposed and voted by the population. So the task was to inform and mobilize the population to participate in this innovative initiative. As the size of the population of Montreal is large, with more than 2 million people, and as the process had to be realized online, we made different action and collaborations to reach different groups. As a first step, we inform and equip about 200 organizations that have become ambassadors of the process to the public. It really couldn't be done without them. So for the collection of ideas, at the Center for the City, we animated group ideation workshop. We really wanted to have collective ideas. That's a point of the local democracy to have collective actions. So alongside of collection idea made through an online form, by mail and by phone. Then for the project development, 4 work committees developed the ideas in projects. Each committee met 3 times. They were composed of representatives of organizations and citizens group. Then the city did an analysis of the projects that left 35 projects on the ballot. To inform about the vote, 50 activities have been organized on the field, reaching more than 2,000 people. The projects were presented to the population by agents who also had people vote on site. For the results, more than 4,000 people contributed to the ideas. 300 city employees were involved in the process. More than 20,000 Montrealers voted. That's about 1% of the population. And for a first PB on a territory, 1% is a success. 7 projects have been selected by the population and will be realized by the city. So for example, we have the creation of 7 mini forests in Montreal on underutilized public spaces that will add more than 1,000 square meters of forest in Montreal. I'm really glad about it. There will be the transformation of the top floor of a big parking lot to create a public place dedicated to urban agriculture, greening, arts, culture. A 4-season greenhouse producing year-round food in a area that needs more food accessibility, and an ecological corridor connecting key existing biodiversity clusters. So back to you, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Anne. That was fantastic to hear an example of participatory budgeting and to hear how many people are involved and, 200 organisations. I'd love to hear a bit more about that later. Next up, we have Mayor Mikael Rubin, who is the Mayor of Trelleborg in Sweden. It's over to you.
Thank you very much. As a mayor of Trelleborg, I see the challenge of our municipality is that we are having a history of having one company employing everyone, leaving school Friday, starting in the factory Monday. Now we are having not 5,000 employees, we have 200, 250. It meant that they didn't need to be educated on a higher level to get a job. We also have a very large harbor, around 25% of all things coming into Sweden. It's a core harbor, which means that it's very important for the goods transportation within Europe. It's the largest roll-on, roll-off harbor in Scandinavia. And about 1 million vehicles comes with 16 ships as 16 ships leave. So 32 ships coming and leaving the harbor of Trelleborg every day, 365 days a year. We are now moving the harbor to be able to build an attractive new urban area. It's a very large urban development, which means that we will increase the municipality's number of inhabitants with about 25%, over 10,000 new inhabitants. And it will be very nice to live there because it's very close to the harbor and it's very close to public transportation, which means that we don't have to have that many cars. In the same time, that urban area, we build it as a protection against rising sea levels. And doing that, they should also protect the existing buildings, the existing city. And in this new development, we are choosing to be very technical. We should have techniques, I say often, that are not even invented yet. But we start with hydrogen to lower emissions. And the European Union are putting a lot of money into hydrogen, and we try to be one of the first in Sweden with that. We are actually the first town to be a part of the Nordic hydrogen corridor, which means that all the vehicles coming with goods are able to see a petrol station or a hydrogen gas station actually, and it will be in order next year, at least in December 22. So we're also given money to this so that it will be able to buy expensive hydrogen cars that are more expensive. We also put money into the hydrogen, so we'll make it break even to other fuels. So a lot of technique, and we as a politician, and we are very united in the political system in Trelleborg, we see this for 100 years, and that's our little difficulty. How should we talk to the inhabitants of the municipality of Trelleborg that we are doing things now that will be saving the planet in 100 years? So what are we doing? We are having digital meetings, more meetings than the formal things. We're having focus groups. We are letting all people involved in this, living in the areas that we have to do measures, in focus groups to see what actions do we have to do, what actions are possible to do. And we're also talking a lot with the government, other authorities in Sweden to see what rules can you have? Can you give us money? Could you give us the opportunity to test new techniques? We also, not as good as Canada, of course, but we also have the largest participatory budget in Sweden. So we start with that so that they can learn, the inhabitants of the municipality of Trelleborg, learn that you have to choose. You can't get all you want. So if there is 50 or 60 suggestions, we have 5 of them, and they get 1 million Swedish kronor each. So that's all from Trelleborg. Thank you.
Wonderful. Brilliant to hear from you. It's really interesting to hear from a place that's maybe potentially facing the effects of climate change. You mentioned rising sea levels, the need to take action. You talked about local government investment in different approaches and involving the public in conversations about how to save the planet. It sounds like there's a lot going on over there in Trelleborg. So I look forward to hearing a little bit more on the question and answers. Thank you. Rizka, over to you next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Let me share my screen first. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sure can. Good to go.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, everyone. My name is Rizka. I'm from Kota Kita, and we are a nonprofit organization based in Indonesian city of Surakarta, focused on citizen participation and urban development. And today, I will be sharing about the initiative of the local government of Semarang in promoting the local climate action. And part of the initiative is actually our collaboration in formulating the green participatory budgeting. So I would like to start by giving a little bit of context about Indonesia. So Indonesia is an archipelagic country with more than 17,000 islands and is home to many coastal cities under threat of climate change, urban growth, and institutional challenges. And Semarang is one of the coastal cities in Indonesia with exposure to coastal flooding, sea level rise, and other climate hazards. And one of the challenge in tackling climate issues in Semarang and other cities in Indonesia is that the community experience the impact of climate change and are the most vulnerable to the impact of climate change, yet they are not informed and empowered to address the larger phenomena. But luckily, the government of Semarang is one of the city government that has been proactively promoting community-based adaptation programs since the last few years. And I would like to share with you the two of those programs. One is Kampung Iklim, and the other is Kampung Tematik. The first is actually a program from the Ministry of Environment aiming at increasing awareness of the local community to address the impact of climate change. And for years, this program, which varied from, mangrove cultivation, as you can see from the picture, and urban agriculture or rainwater harvesting, and etc., has been strengthening the community adaptation to climate change. And the other program is called the Thematic Kampung, which aim to strengthen the identity of neighborhoods. And some of them focus on the adaptation projects like recycling and urban agriculture. And there are also some other specific theme projects like early warning systems, waste banks, and community-based sanitation, for example. And for years, this community-based program has been very successful in terms of building community awareness on climate change. But as for reflection, actually there are still some gaps. First is there are still high dependency on the national-driven program, which often very standardized. So it's often failed to recognize the specific needs of certain areas. And secondly, these programs are not yet implemented in the city scale, so mostly only in the selected sites. So the question then be, how can we actually encourage more meaningful participation and promote local climate action in a more systematic and a structured way? So in Kota Kita, as well as we were working together with some other organization, we talked with the community and we talked with the local government, and we co-developed the concept of resilient kampung, which actually promote more participation for local citizens in the development of community-based climate action, which tap into the existing PB process, which then called as Green Musrembang or Green PB. So the idea is to allocate specific funds in the existing PB process for climate sensitive programs. And the Green PB itself, it hope we can serve as a citywide platform for a more systematic change that promotes and funds more actions on the ground. But, even though this kampung level intervention might be small in scale, but if critical mass of kampung has adopted the resilient principle into their development, we believe that this will create an exponential effect for the city as a whole. And in 2020, so last year, we developed a resilient kampung guideline, which actually serves as a baseline for the government on creating the regulation on green musrenbang, and will be serving as a practical guide for the community in implementing adaptation and mitigation projects later on. So I think that's all from me for now. Let's continue with the discussion later on. Back to you, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Rizka, and brilliant to hear about Resilient Kampung at the end there. And you brought in examples of community-based action, central government programs delivered at the local level, and so much more besides. So thanks so much for that. And then our final speaker, Katongo, it's over to you. And then we will be diving into our question and answer session. So if you do have any questions, you're listening to this now, please do post them and we'll get round to them if we can. Okay, Katongo.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and also thank you to the organizers for this event. I think it's really, really timely and a relevant discussion. It also speaks to some of the work that we are doing at CIPRI under the Climate Change and Risk Program, particularly looking at policy actor responses to climate change related risks, also focusing on local level action and local level actors as well. But for this discussion, I think I'm going to stand on recent research that I conducted in Zambia on climate change adaptation at district level. And just a bit of a context, Zambia is one of the most vulnerable countries in Africa and the world as well, and affected by climate impacts, especially floods, droughts, and increase in temperatures. And the case study that I picked, Sioma district, is also one of the vulnerable districts in the country, also owing to economic and social challenges. So the research aim was to find out what are the adaptation strategies that are in place at local level, if any, and how the planning and the implementation process takes place at that level. And I had an interesting discussion with local level government officials, and key insights from the discussion were that there's growing interest from the officers to actually undertake some of these adaptation strategies to kind of cushion the risks of climate change. But at the same time, these officers are met, or they actually implement these strategies with limited reach. And some of the challenges that were raised, I would frame them into two challenges. One, I would call bureaucratic or internal challenges that look at a lack of capacity, for example, lack of coordination, limited resource, lack of policy frameworks, and also the aspect of decentralization. The second aspect of it is on the approach that the officers also undertake to address climate change. And I think this is also a relevant aspect to this discussion. And most of the approaches are top-down in nature, so where the officers sit and decide what to do and how it should be done. And this has also caused a lot of challenges with the people because, one, there's a lack of adoption for the strategies that are implemented. Two, a lack of sustainability, and often these are projects that start and within a short period of time they just are squashed off. So when it comes to, I think, some of the opportunities that I realized when conducting this research was the need to adopt participatory approaches in addressing climate adaptation at district level. And I think that opens up a huge avenue for one, sustainability, success of projects, long-term planning, and actually addressing the key elements that affect vulnerability. So I think there's a lot of opportunity that we could tap on from the democracy angle. And I'm looking forward to discussing further on that. And over to you, Kelly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to all of our 5 speakers there for their input and sharing some, I hope you agree, really interesting points for consideration. We've heard about participatory budgeting, citizens' assemblies, community-based action, local government-led initiatives and investment, central government programs delivered at different levels, network building, and so much more besides. So we're going to dive straight into the questions. And Katongo, I'm actually going to come straight back to you because I think you started talking about, why it's important to take a democratic approach. So I was wondering if you could develop that a little bit more. Why is it important that we take a democratic approach? And then we'll open it up to others.
Thank you so much. If Johan Lilia, the ICLD Secretary General, can allow me to pick on some of his words in his opening remarks. Democracy is the best foundation for a sustained society. And I think that's an answer in itself. So as I indicated, when you look at the values, the core values of democracy and the tenets of democracy, we're speaking transparency, we're speaking accountability, we're speaking equity and equality, and we're speaking, most importantly, about participation. And if we are going to have sustained climate action, I think it's very important that we have all these core elements and ensure that we involve the citizens and the most affected people when it comes to climate action. Over to you, Kelly. I don't know if I answered your question.
You sure did. Rizka or Anne, is there anything that you would add to what Katongo said just there about why is it important we take democratic approaches?
Yeah, I mean, like in the context of Indonesia, Indonesia is a very big country, and a lot of climate adaptation and mitigation projects are still driven by the national government. And in a lot of cases, the national top-down program often fails to recognize the localized issues for each area, because each area are different, right? So the communities itself, they also impacted differently by climate change. So in this sense, the democratic approach make a lot of sense because the proposed project could be better address the big phenomena if the community are involved, and the project could be more tailored in adjusting the needs of the community because they are the one that knows their condition. So that's from me, I think.
Thank you. Anne, is there anything that you would add to that?
Yes. For the PB, as a recent UN report indicates, participatory budgeting provides a pathway towards improving future social resiliency and preparedness for city response and recovery. So indeed, PB increases the capacity of cities and communities to act together in the fight against climate change. As UN said, PB makes possible the rapid adoption of local actions and the allocation of financial resources that result from the direct interactions between urban dwellers and government. So in fact, in Montreal, the PB highlighted the concerns of the people towards ecological and social transition. And the other PBs in Quebec also demonstrated that citizen participation can change the priorities of the cities, as innovative and ecological projects are voted that cities wouldn't have invested in at first. So the democratic approach allows the people to act, face eco-anxiety by acting and proposing solutions that influence the city, and the city will realize them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anne. Miguel, I actually have a question that's come in directly for you, and then I'll come on and I'll talk to Kasia about inclusion. So Mateusz from Poland has asked, can participation with residents be useful, or will it slow down the necessary steps to be taken? And maybe you could combine that with any thoughts around a democratic approach.
Yeah, the democratic approach for me is that we tend to, in Sweden, to make plans and write down like 600 pages of what we are supposed to do in the next coming 10 years. We are doing it the other way around. So do action now, make sure that we have cars with hydrogen, and look forward to having a station. So I don't think it's a democratic way to wait, because as a politician with all the civil servants we do have more information, and sharing that information by doing action. And then maybe in 2 years we do some other action, but sharing that information and doing stuff is more important than waiting, because democracy is very, very good. But as people tend to not read all the facts and see all the problems, we need to do something. And then if they don't want me or the local government we have now, we have elections. So then they can choose someone else.
Super, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to thinking a bit about inclusion now. And Kasia, I'll come to you first for this one. So how do you think we can ensure that participatory climate action is inclusive of different communities? Is that something that you thought about? How have you addressed barriers to participation in the wonderful example that you shared earlier?
Thanks. I probably would say an obvious thing, that you have to think throughout all process and bear in mind that people are obviously different, and as well as their needs or capacities. And it could be in terms of, for example, the time they can spend on the process, how much they know about the problem, about their difficulties in learning or other disabilities. So there is really much to bear in mind. And you have to start thinking about it at the very beginning while designing and planning the process. And in climate assemblies, we tried by providing the technical support and telling people about it at the very beginning, so that they would be invited and feel invited to the process, even though they do not have a computer at home or haven't used Zoom in their life. So I would say it is crucial, as well as a professional facilitation team, which would allow all participants to feel invited, to feel heard. It has to be done that people from all walks of life have their say in the process, and it could be done in climate assembly by the sortition process, but in other processes such as PB, you can make an additional effort to reach people who would normally don't attend the meeting. They do not have the internet connection or do not watch news. They need an additional support to know the problem, to hear about the process, and then to be engaged. And at the execution phase, I would say you can propose different call to actions for different groups of people, from really simple ones like, I don't know, take part in our survey or vote in PB. There are very short, very easy to do actions. And on the other hand, you can invite people to some much more demanding activities, such as participate in person in climate assembly meetings. I don't know, try to co-design the process with us, join our working group, and so on. So if you have a variety of activities adjusted and suited for different types of people, you will probably engage more of them, and the process will be the results of the process will be just better.
That was a wonderfully comprehensive answer, Kasia. Thank you. And yeah, interested to know if anyone might have anything that they would add to anything that Kasia just shared there, particularly from experiences of participatory budgeting.
No, but Michael would like to say something. Is possible?
Of course, go for it.
I think that we need to get information, and we need to get information out in a positive way. Since mankind invented fire, we have always have technical solutions to problems. And I think it's very important that we don't make environment problem as an Armageddon that are not you can't have solutions. We have solutions, and we will have solutions. And I think having that positive approach will make it easier for people to be involved in the democratic process, and they haven't given up. So that's one thing I would like to put in the discussion.
No, that's super helpful addition. Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to add anything to that? Otherwise, Anne, I definitely have a question for you.
Yeah, I might add a little, if I may. So just to echo what Kasia and Michael have said, so at Kota Kita, inclusivity is actually our core principle. So we define inclusivity as an open and continuous process of engaging various community members, like women, persons with disabilities, and elderly, and also children, to try to understand their perspective and their needs and aspirations regarding to the impacts of climate change. So, for example, for the people with disabilities and elderly, they often rely a lot on the caregiver. So at least in the event of disaster, these caregivers should know what to do. So I mean, like, the point that I want to say is, like, it's important to involve everyone, at least the representative of these vulnerable communities throughout all of the process, from the planning, from the through the implementation. So that's a little addition from.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rizka. And Anne, I mean, if there is something relevant, you were talking about informing and equipping 200 orgs to become ambassadors when you did a presentation earlier. I'd be really interested to know if there's anything relevant for inclusion there. But I'm also just going to move us on and throw in the next question, which is around challenges, really. And again, I'd be really interested to know what challenges you think there are for participatory climate action at the local level, and if there's any ways you found to overcome some of those challenges that have been shared here. And I know, Katongo, you shared a few a little earlier on, for sure.
Yes, there are challenges. One of them is communicating, vulgarizing, is that a word in English, around climate change effects, or the concept of ecological and social transition. It's a concept, can be hard to understand. So that's why we collaborated with a lot of organizations to be help in communicating to the public. So we did an information session where over than 150 organizations participated, and we create a kit for organizations to communicate the process to the public. So they could do little workshop with their members, and they could help them submit ideas. Because Montreal City is allowed, because of its law, only to communicate in French or English, but mostly in French. But the population is multicultural, so organization could help us to communicate in another language. So communication is a challenge, yeah.
Wonderful. And Katongo, is there anything else from your research and the work you've done that you would add to some of these challenges?
Absolutely, and just picking back to the previous question on inclusion, I think lack of inclusion is a serious challenge, and information sharing, how to translate the scientific information about climate change and climate action to these local communities. I think that was one challenge that was pointed out. You know, language translation, for example, from English to local languages, some of the scientific terms. And also just equipping people with the necessary information so that they can also jump on board and make decisions together with the local authorities. So I think it's really key that as we advocate for participation, we ensure that the people are also equipped with the right information so that we improve, I think, the chances of adopting some of these initiatives. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you. And Rizka, in a moment, I'm going to come to you just to ask a question around context. But we have another question, which Kasia, actually, I think is directed at yourself, which is from Nancy Mundo in Uganda, who has asked, who designs the list of priorities for spending that are voted upon by the public? And are local government policies there to guide their decisions? And you talked earlier about all of the kind of recommendations that had come out of the process you talked about. Is there anything we need to think about in respect to challenges there, but also in respect to Nancy's question about who designs that list of priorities that are voted upon?
So all of the recommendations which were voted by the Climate Assembly members were obligatory for the local government. So they after the assembly, they they made a list of priorities themselves, but they are obliged to implement all of them. And the recommendations were given by citizens of Warsaw, by experts, by public officers, by stakeholders from NGOs and other entities, and by assembly members themselves. So literally all citizens of Warsaw and abroad could contribute to the list of the recommendations. And during the deliberation process, after many days of and many hours of group discussions, plenary sessions, they had to vote for the best ones in their view. So it was their job mainly, and we had a short rule book for the assembly. Not each recommendation could be voted. For example, if you would like to counteract energy efficiency increase, it wouldn't be possible to get the recommendation voted at the end of the process. So they should have been in line or not in conflict in existing policies and with the aim of the assembly, so to speak.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Kasia. And it's really interesting there thinking about the obligatory nature of some of those recommendations. I would be interested in hearing maybe a little later about the challenges as an elected representative, perhaps, Mikhail, in implementing things that have come through such a process. But we are going to move on just to context. And Rizka, I'm going to direct this question to you to begin. So can you see cultural and political differences affecting the outcomes and successes of participatory climate action in different places? And any thoughts you might have around political buy-in in participatory climate action, and then, you know, taking steps for implementation after people have been involved would be really interesting to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. I mean, political buy-in from the government leaders is very crucial component that will directly affect the success of the participatory climate action and community-based programs. One leader might have focus on climate issues, but often there are shifts in the government and that changes everything. So in this case, this type of community-based program or initiative should have a regulatory framework or should be adopted in the local regulation. So this way it would at least minimize the risk of failure, even if there is change in the leadership position at the city level. And I think it's also important to engage, so not only leaders at the municipal or city government level, but also inform and empower those in the department level. So they will be because they likely be the ones who will be organizing these efforts on the day-to-day basis. So this will be, continuation of programs will be also depending on them. And I think regarding the how can we secure a political buy-in, I think one of the best way is just to work closely with both the government and the community members, so we can gain their trust. And this might not come easily, but at least consistent communication with them through regular dialogue and discussion, you would be one way to do that. And from our project in Semarang, I think developing ideas with them with a co-design process together with them, collaboratively develop the idea together could be one way to do it, because in that case, the political buy-in will just be following.
Wonderful. So much. Thank you so much, Rizka. Has anyone got anything they'd like to follow up from there? Otherwise, I do have a question about relationships with representative democracy, which I think flows really nicely from this. And how do we connect with and get support from other levels of government that might hold decision-making power and resources to address key issues? And Mikhail, I'm actually going to come to you first, because I know in your talk you mentioned speaking to government about funding and testing new techniques. So is there anything you'd like to follow on there from what Rizka said, but also how we connect with and get support from other levels of government?
That's actually our largest problem due to erosion and rising sea levels in the south of Sweden. Because rising sea levels is just a problem in the south of Sweden. And that means the government is in Stockholm, and north of Stockholm there is not a problem. So we also have like 5 or 6 different authorities that do their thing, and they do it very good and correct, but all their regulations are not, they are fighting against each other. So authority 1 is doing this and authority 2 is doing that, and they're not combining. And also it's taking too long time for the government to put an economical standard into this. How much should the people living in the municipality of Trelleborg pay? How much should the owners of the facilities pay? And will there be any money from the government? So that's our largest problem. I'm actually a speaker in a couple of weeks in a event with these authorities and the government. So large problem, and being able to take action and our people in Trelleborg asking for action, it's a problem. We are not allowed to do the things we want to do. If we're doing this thing, it's violating environment law, and we're doing that, it's another thing. It's not in order with building laws. So we need to try and experiment, and we've asked the local authorities in Skåne, south of Sweden, to be able to test things.
Thanks. That's a really interesting, insightful perspective, actually. And I think it kind of flows then into the final question I'm going to ask, which has come from another participant today, which is Joe Asia from Uganda. And I guess this is where we maybe think about the connection between political action and community will for action. So Joe shared an example about tree cover being depleted for charcoal in several districts in Western Uganda and the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And democratically, the population there might justify that happening. So the question really is around how progressive local leaders could reverse this. But I think there's an interesting point of reflection there between, as I said, community interest, action, will, and local leadership or representation. So just to end, does anyone want to share some further thoughts around that? Difficult scenario, but
I can try. I don't think if we have the same problem, but a way to make this thing with hydrogen live longer than this political periods of election. We try to involve all the staff in all municipalities of Trelleborg, the local owned companies, the local bus company, and we have a hydrogen general, not a good word, but think you know what I mean, and he has a staff doing this. So all of the community, all of the municipality should do hydrogen. That's so when we are not re-elected, it will continue anyway. So that's the way to do it in Sweden, I think.
Wonderful. Would anyone like to add anything to that? Otherwise, I think we'll wrap up with maybe 30 seconds of final reflections from you. Anne, over to you.
Just a little thought. So as I said, approaches like PB, they can really show the concerns of the population, what are the demands about climate change. So it can be through those democratic approaches that population really gets to tell the cities, the governments, what they're looking for. And so it's important to have those democratic approach.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Anne. Okay, it's time for some final reflections before we go and wrap up the event. Of course, it never feels like we have enough time to really get into the issues, but I hope you've enjoyed some of the wonderful cases and insights that our speakers have shared with you today. So I'm going to go in the order that we did the presentation. So Kasia, can I start with you for some final reflections? Just 30 seconds or so.
And it should be meaningful. So I will only say that I really think of democratic innovation such as climate assembly as a remedy for our time to fight the polarization and to find a way to build a genuine dialogue within people, within fellow countrymen. So I think about climate assemblies and maybe PBs and other deliberative processes in this way, and it helps me a lot while doing so. So maybe that thought at the end.
Thank you so much. And Anne?
Yes, so for the PB in Montreal, it was a pilot project, a first edition that was realized online. So it's a success, but we are supporting the city right now in the evaluation of the approach, and we will have recommendation for the future editions. So to make it more inclusive, for it to reach more people, to have more impact. So I can wait to see how the future edition will have an impact on the city.
Wonderful, thank you. Miguel, over to you.
Just do it. Just do it, and then let people vote or not vote. Just do it, because we can't wait. And as you do it, out with information. So just do it.
That was a wonderful, simple message. Thank you so much. And Rizka, over to you.
For me, I think the local community is still the key actors who should advocate for, like the improvement for the neighborhood, especially in the climate issues. And to support that, I think access to information is key in supporting them with adequate information about the bigger phenomenon. And that's not only the role of the local government, but also us as a community, as a citizens, and as an NGO, as part of the community. So I think that's all from me.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rizka. And Katongo.
Thank you so much. I think from my end, two things: transformation and sustainability. Transformation, that we need to transform the way we do things. We need a serious shift from the business as usual doing things, especially when it comes to issues of climate change. And the local level needs adequate support. And sustainability, I think we need to leverage democracy and the tenets of democracy to ensure that we sustain the local level action. And that's it from me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, that just leaves me to thank all of our speakers and event collaborators. I hope you've really enjoyed spending a good hour or so with us and hearing all of that. Before we end, of course, this event is about democracy, participation. We do have a call to action and a little bit of information about things you can get involved with. So I'm just going to bring back Nikhil Kumar from People Power to just share a call for action from their side. And then I've just got one little thing to say before we close.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And thank you to all the speakers on the panel. It's been really, really exciting to hear about all of these local participatory solutions for climate change around the world. And I just wanted to share that if you're interested in advocating for or implementing a similar initiative in your city or municipality, you can sign up for People Powered's mentorship program, which we offer for free. And you can find more information on our website at peoplepowered.org. And you'll also find online courses and info sheets on climate-sensitive PB, as well as climate assemblies on the website, and other fantastic resources from other organizations in our resource center. So yeah, I'm really excited to continue this conversation, and thanks for attending.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Akhil. And just finally, so icld, the Swedish International Centre for Local Democracy, is actually starting a network of municipal partnerships for climate action. And we really hope that you've been inspired by what you've heard today and want to get involved in that. Cities like Tilburg and others are planning to join, I understand. So please do, if you're interested in getting involved in that network of municipal partnerships for climate action, do get involved. And I'm sure it'll be a really fantastic space. So thanks so much for everyone again that has spoken today, helped this event to happen. And of course, to everyone that has joined us from, it seems literally all over the world. So yeah, take care. Thank you.